Our first case takes us to a tragic story of a teenage girl, Mackenzie Sharilla, whose actions shattered her families forever. At just 18 years old, Sharilla was at a crossroads, but instead of charting a future, she was found guilty of a horrific crime. In a calculated, deliberate act, she intentionally slammed her car into a building at a staggering 100 miles per hour. The passengers, her boyfriend and his friend, were killed in the crash. The prosecution painted a grim picture of a toxic relationship that spiraled into a fatal decision. The courtroom watched in silence as the evidence mounted, revealing a young woman who chose to end lives, not by accident, but by a chilling, fatal design. Ultimately, the judge handed down a sentence of 15 years to life in prison, a verdict that marks the end of her freedom and the beginning of a lifetime behind bars.
That there was only one goal.
You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
And a few days before the crash, she allegedly took the same route to plot the crime. This is where the judge now finds her guilty.
Count one. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sharilla, guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo.
She now stands up to be placed in handcuffs as she continues to tear up.
Count two. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sharilla, guilty of murder, to wit Davion Flanagan.
Sharilla now has a moment to speak before her sentencing.
The families of Dom and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken.
There was no medical condition that caused this as an accident. There was no mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. There's a very good likelihood, Mackenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. She's sentenced on count one, 15 years to life. Count two, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other.
The judge just sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison.
Next, we confront a crime that horrified a nation: the brutal murder of a 13-year-old girl by her classmate, Aiden Fucci. Fucci, a boy who should have been concerned with school and sports, was instead driven by a dark impulse, stabbing his victim an unimaginable 114 times. The footage from the police car and interrogation room shows a young man whose composure seems at odds with the sheer brutality of his actions. In a stunning admission, Fucci pled guilty to first-degree murder, leaving the court to grapple with the depths of his depravity. The sentence was swift and severe: life in prison, with the possibility of a review after 25 years. It is a sentence that acknowledges both the gravity of his crime and the question of what happens to a child who becomes a monster.
It's all over. You're all over the internet, Negro. This is serious.
It's very serious.
This isn't no joke. This is your whole life. Your whole life. And ours.
A video from prosecutors showed Fucci and the girl allegedly walking together right before she was murdered. Then about 90 minutes later, the video shows Fucci allegedly running away from the area where the body was found.
114 stab wounds, 49 defensive wounds, 35 wounds to the head and neck, 29 to the back and shoulder, and 6 fatal wounds.
After Fucci pled guilty to first-degree murder, the judge now hands down his sentence.
Having entered a plea of guilty to the crime of first-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison. Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years.
After Fucci was sentenced, he stood still with a little movement.
Our third case brings us to a small town ripped apart by an act of senseless violence. Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale, both 16, committed a crime so cold and calculated it defies comprehension. Over a poor grade in a high school Spanish class, these two teenagers ambushed their beloved teacher, ambushing her on her daily walk and beating her to death with a baseball bat. The motive, so trivial, makes the crime all the more horrifying. In the legal aftermath, Goodale pled guilty and testified against his friend, revealing a dark conspiracy that led to their teacher's demise. The court's judgment was clear: life in prison for both. Goodale received a chance at parole after 25 years, a path to a future he almost forfeited. Miller, however, must wait 35 years before he can even be considered for release. It's a stark reminder that even in our schools, the darkest motivations can lead to the most tragic outcomes.
And she walked by, hit her in the back of the head, and then I said, "Holy shit, make sure she's dead." So we hit her 30 more times.
They then dragged her into the woods and beat her to death with a baseball bat.
What's the plan after that? There wasn't a plan beyond that. Like, hide the body, bury the body, stage the body. At that time, we were going to hide the body I guess in our arrogance, we kind of assumed that nobody would ever find her.
Not long after, both boys were arrested. Court documents allege that the witness who knew Goodale showed law enforcement Snapchat messages that showed Goodale and Miller's involvement in the murder. One of the Snapchat messages saying, "Point of view, you're my Spanish teacher, and this is the last thing you see," followed by "Time to hide a body." Jeremy Goodale would later plead guilty and testify against his best friend Miller.
I understood that he had the intent to kill Mrs. Graver.
What is your plea to murder in the first degree, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
This is the moment that Goodale gets to speak before his sentence.
I've had time to think on what to say, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. Every day I wish I could go back and stop myself. I can't comprehend losing a loved one in such an awful way.
And now the judge hands down his sentence.
The defendants shall be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
Now for Miller. This is him apologizing before he receives his sentence.
I'd like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of you and Graver. To the family, I'm sincerely sorry for the distress that I've caused you and the devastation. And I ask that I'm given a chance, and I don't want to be institutionalized. I don't want to be in so long that I forget about what mattered, where I come from, and I look forward to getting through this.
And now the judge has some final last words.
The defendant, Willard Noble Chapin Miller, should be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 35 years.
Miller seems to be completely unfazed.
Finally, we turn to a story of betrayal and cold-blooded murder among friends. Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy, just 16 years old, murdered their friend Skylar Nees because, in their own words, they didn't like her anymore. This chilling motive, a feeling as fleeting as teenage angst, led to the premeditated taking of a life. The investigation revealed a friendship built on a foundation of malice, culminating in the ultimate betrayal. In the end, Schoaf chose to plead guilty to second-degree murder, a decision that led to a 30-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Eddy was sentenced to life in prison, with parole eligibility after 15 years. The case stands as a haunting testament to how quickly a friendship can turn fatal, driven by a simple, chilling absence of empathy.
Proper way to make this apology, because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done. I hurt the Neese family and those who love Skylar. I hurt my parents and shamed my family. May God bring eternal peace to Skylar and the entire Neese family. After securing a plea deal, the judge now gives Schoaf for sentence. Rachel Schoaf, it is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years. But she will have the possibility of parole in 10 years. And now for Eddy, it is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for the rest of your natural life. That sentence is technically with mercy, which makes you eligible for parole after you have served 15 years.
These are not just crime stories. They are cautionary tales about what happens when innocence is lost and darkness takes hold. The reactions of these young people, from the emotionless gaze to the chillingly casual, please force us to question what leads a child down such a destructive path. We'll be back after the break with more on what these cases mean for our society. If you found this summary of the case impactful, please consider subscribing to our channel for more reports like this. Also, feel free to share your thoughts and reflections on this tragic case in the comments section below.